Welcome back. What are the most critical mistakes that you can avoid when building a wood fence? We're going to talk about that right now, and no better place to do that than our cameraman's house. He inherited these with the house, but this is something you can look for if you're shopping for a new house to know whether or not you've got a solid fence. While on the surface, this fence looks all right, the first thing we must do is we must use the passageway. This is where I would say you make your first mistake. I will let the camera guy tell me how much he enjoys using this gate. Crickets. He does not enjoy using this gate because you cannot latch it from this side. Obviously it doesn't shut all the way. I hate this latch. I hate the ones that have a hole that go through and you have a little thumb catch here. I hate those. They never line up, and if the gate moves even a little bit over time because of warping or drying or just ground movement, that gate is not going to fit and it's not going to work. They're terrible. There's nothing good about them. Nothing inherently wrong with these particular hinges. The only thing I would say about the hinges is please just use two. Just two. I know you see that on a lot of doors and stuff like that, and engineers will specify more than two. Use two good high quality hinges capable of carrying the weight of that gate, but only use two because one of them is always in a bind. We're not doing this in a vacuum where everything's perfect in a shop and we can get everything aligned perfectly. So adding that third hinge was really doing nothing for you except for wearing one of them out much faster and potentially making it harder to open and close your gate. So good hinges, good latch. And the other thing you will notice about this gate is the bracing. We have this brace and tension, this brace and compression. The best thing to do would be put the whole brace and compression, run it from here down to here, and that would have been a much better result and helped keep this gate from dragging the ground and sagging. As we can tell, this gate has clearly sagged. I'm just guessing on the reveal, we've got about 1 inch of sag here. Build your gate right, use good hardware. Hey, last time you saw him, it was like, you might have seen him sprinkled throughout, but now he's officially an employee of SWI. And officially driving. I digress. Now, I'm not exactly sure how much arch this was supposed to have, but over time, its arch has diminished. It's sunk. Because if you'll notice, these rails are terribly bowed. And the reason they're bowed is because they were turned the wrong way. Any 2x4 is meant to be turned up on its side for the maximum amount of strength. And what we do when we turn it here is we give it a place to basically sag as the water penetrates it and it gets soft, and it'll sag and it'll stay sagged. The good thing about this is they did use 3. The bad thing is the 3 still don't have the same strength as 2 would have had if they were turned correctly. And the other bad thing about doing it this way is you have to do what's called toe nailing, and that's where we put the screws in from the top of the 2x4 like this, screw it into the side. And this is simply not as strong as going through a 2x4 that was right here and screwing straight into that wood. You're never going to get the strength. You're going to have all these gaps because that wood dries and shrinks. You can see it's pulled away. I don't know if this fit originally, but with all the bowing and the stress that it's been under, now we're pulling away. So all that weight is 100% resting on those fasteners, and it's just not a good fit. Make sure that you turn your 2x4s the correct way. That's part 1. Part 2 would be make sure you don't overspace them, because we'll see a lot of people notice that they can buy 12-foot 2x4s and be like, I have to set a lot less posts if I use 12-footers instead of 8-footers. But guess what? You're going to have the same problem. You need that load-bearing capability to be able to carry the weight of all those pickets, not only now, but as they may get drugged down by snow. We all know that wood gets softer as it gets wet. So whatever the conditions may be, don't overspace your 2x4s. 8 foot is going to be our max. And then if we're going taller, we're going to shrink that spacing down. Lastly, don't toenail, face nail. Turn them the correct way and then face nail them onto your 2x4 and come up with a system, because just about any fence out there can be done using face nailing, and then you can use additional trim if you're looking for a beefed up look or something like that. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat. They're going to leave you with a better fence long run. If you spend a lot of time doing really nice carpentry work on this fence and then all the joints separate and it looks like this after 10 years, then it's really no benefit. Proper number would be the next thing I would say. On a 6-foot fence, we're going to use 3 rails. This is a 6-foot tall fence. On an 8-foot tall, that's when we go to 4 rails. And on a 7, you're kind of in the middle. That's going to be your call. Anything 6 foot tall or taller needs at least 3 rails or more. You go down to 5 foot, maybe you can get by with 2 rails, but our company is probably still going to add 3 rails to it. And it's not until we get to a 4-foot tall fence that we go to only 2 rails. Okay. So this is another one that I'll just point out. There is no middle rail. This is kind of a unique situation where they have set the bottom of the fence onto the concrete. I can't say that I would recommend doing that either. Luckily for them, they don't have the 3 rails, and these are not even real rails. These are 1-bys, so they have no load bearing capability really vertically. And so it's a good thing they put it on the concrete. When they put it on the concrete, the bad thing is that it could potentially rot out that fence sooner. So be thinking about all that stuff and really consider how you're putting this together. Now, the funny thing is here, they used a 1x to get this good neighbor look. But over here on this side, they actually used a 2x4. So let's go look at that one. So this is an example of one where they almost got everything right. They got the right number of rails. They turned them the right way, but they still use these brackets to put them inside. Now, the one thing I will say about this is if you're going to put them inside, this is a better way to do it because we don't actually have to toenail. But then you have these ugly brackets that I don't think people are super excited about. And we could have just as easy face nailed this and then still done the same pattern, even with the face nailed 2x4, which is gonna lead me right into my next thing. And this one's kind of a big deal because people don't think about it enough until after the wood starts to dry and move. But that is gonna be your reveal up here. Tons and tons of people make the wrong mistake and will have too much reveal on the bottom and too much on the top. The ideal we're looking for is, I'm going to say 6 inches or less reveal between the top of the top 2x4 and the top of the picket. Same thing on the bottom, 6 inches or less. The reason we do that is because we can get a lot of movement in that picket top, and you'll put the fence in and then pretty soon everything curves towards the sun as it dries out, and then you have picket tops that are all over the place, and people hate that. So don't make that mistake and go with no more than a 6-inch reveal from here to the top of the picket, and same thing on the bottom. The next thing is make sure you use the right type of posts and set them correctly. As we've discussed many times on this channel, the most expensive part of your fence is getting the post in the ground, and that is also what's going to determine how well your fence looks. Here's a prime example right here. I thought when I was looking at this fence that some of these posts had rotted off. That's not at all the case. All these posts, they're still solid. That means these posts were not set correctly and they have shifted and leaned over time. I actually think these might be treated pine, but I'm not 100% certain. But in any way, shape, or form, they've actually held up very well. And that leads me to think that maybe there's not concrete on it, because that's something else a lot of people make a mistake on. And that is, if you're gonna use wood posts, you probably should reconsider using concrete. The reason people use concrete is because it's fast and easy. And you're probably thinking, I don't really think it's that fast and it's not that easy. But it's a lot faster and easier for most people than tamping dirt in there and trying to get that dirt back to solid compaction. So people use concrete because it gets hard and it gets hard fast, but that concrete will actually rot out these posts faster than if they were just set in the dirt. So consider not using concrete for your fence if you're going to use wood posts. But if you wait till the end of the video, we'll tell you what you really should be doing. I was told that YouTubers these days, they do this thing where they do shout outs. So I'm going to give a shout out to Ben Olson, who is the youngest son of the other owner of SWI, probably our youngest and most fanatic fan, if you will. As you can see, this fence is incredibly discolored. This is all silvered and this is all bleached out. This is bleached from the sprinklers, which is very, very common to have happen. And then the top where it doesn't get water is going to be silvered out. Better than undoing all this mess, the best thing we can do is prevent this mess in the first place by applying good stain. If you're going to invest this kind of money into your fence, it's only prudent and wise to invest in stain. Most people say they chose wood over vinyl because they like the look of wood. Well, if you like the look of wood, the only way it's going to stay looking nice and beautiful as the day you installed it is if you put stain on it. And that's also protecting your investment. For us, we choose Wood Defender. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to travel in the time machine all the way back to last year when we stained our fence. Whew. This is a fence that we stained a year ago. And I'm going to be honest, when we first stained this fence, I was like, ooh, that wood doesn't look great. Now the story behind this particular wood is that it was really old when we put it up. We got a really good deal on this, and some of it was even dry rotted from sitting in the bundles for so long. So it was really tough to try and get this stuff to take a stain, and when we applied the stain to this, that's probably the #1 comment we had on this video right over here when we did this, is hey, why didn't it make it all look the same? But fast forward a year, and this entire fence looks so uniform and so good. But that is the next tip that I'm going to say. If you want to protect your investment, put some good high quality stain on it and use Wood Defender, because this is what it does. It's been a year since we did this. The coloring is great. It's all very uniform now and looks much, much better than it would have had we not put the stain on it, and than it did even right after we stained it. It only took a couple months and all this stuff blended out and it looked amazing. So that's the tip. Protect your investment. If you're going to go through all this expense, man, make sure it stays looking nice for a while. And why not even try and match it to your house and your personality? You know what? And I just noticed this nail right here, it's sticking out, and that bothers me. But it is a really great segue into my next point. What type of fasteners are you going to use? Now there's 3 different things that I can think people are using currently, and that is screws, nails, and staples. Staples being the lowest, And we've done some videos on the staples versus screws and nails right over here. And what I can say about staples that we've seen is they're really, really small and it's really quick to rust through them. If you're going to use nails, make sure that it's some sort of a ring shank nail so that it has that holding power. As that wood dries out and shrinks around it, then it will grab that nail tighter and it'll be harder to pull out over time than when you put it into a wet piece of wood. On a lot of fences, you'll see those unsightly streaks all the way down your fence, and that is because they used a screw, basically like a drywall screw, or maybe one of the gold screws, and that tannic acid's reacted with that screw in such a manner that it's left that stain all the way down the fence. And if you want to avoid that when you're using cedar, make sure that you use stainless steel. Other people in the South, they use a lot of treated stuff. You're going to have to find a fastener that works well with the pressure treated type of wood that you're using on your fence. Now, screws are available, but what I will tell you is that you are going to pay a ton more if you're having somebody else install this. It takes easily 3 times as long to screw a fence than it would to nail it, probably even more so. So be prepared to pay for that premium price if you want screws. And what we've seen over time is it really doesn't matter a lot. We're not seeing better life out of screws versus nails. We've been doing this long enough. I'm not seeing boards blowing off or coming off faster with one way or another. When done right, nails are fine and they will hold for the life of your fence. This fence here sees tons and tons of wind all day long, especially in the winter. We've seen 65-mile-an-hour winds here. This is to the north. There's no trees. See tons and tons of wind and it holds up really well. Something we haven't talked about though, do you know what you're getting? Consider the type of wood that you're buying. I know that in the West, they sometimes have redwood still in California, which is pretty popular. Pressure treated pine is really popular in the Southeast. In a lot of areas we have cedar, but there's different types of cedar. There's white cedar, red cedar, and then now we're seeing a lot of the Japanese incense cedar coming out of Japan. So know what you're getting. I don't really have anything to say better about one versus the other. It's really just comes down to cost. If you're using bare wood, number one, don't do that anywhere below the ground or at the ground. But number two, definitely protect that investment. Put something on it to make it look good and keep it looking good for the test of time. Earlier I mentioned about post spacing. Well, obviously, because this is a horizontal cedar fence and our pickets are 6 feet long, we are on 6 feet centers, which works out really well for us because we've got a 7-foot tall fence and, as mentioned, plenty of wind. That's why this fence stays looking good. We did not need the gap. I just added the gap because I like the look. Honestly, if you're going to do a horizontal cedar fence, it's a lot easier to make a fence look good with a gap than it would be to try and butt it up, because you're going to notice every single imperfection if it's butted up tight to each other. So even if it's a 1/4 inch gap, I always suggest putting a gap in between your boards. Wow, while we're on benefits of this style of fence, the other thing you'll notice is I don't see any fasteners. Just a couple here in these cover pickets, but all the other fasteners at the post I don't see. And then I have a little bit right here that you can see on this particular board, which is another tip. If you're going to do a horizontal wood fence, make sure that you put that middle brace in there, and that'll just help keep the boards from warping against each other over time. This narrows down our spacing to 3 feet between the post and our vertical support so that we don't get any of that cross waving, which will also make your fence look really bad. But as you can see, this thing's been up a year, dried out really nicely, and it is still perfectly straight and beautiful as the day we did it. How many tips are we on? But I'm gonna throw you one more right now. Stop using wood. Stop putting wood in the ground. Why you can put that wood in the ground? You know it's gonna rot. I don't care if it's cedar, redwood, or freaking unicorn wood. It's gonna rot. If you use concrete, it's gonna rot even faster. So if you're just like, I just want to use concrete, then definitely use steel. Why not put an engineered product in the ground instead of one that nature made that may or may not last? I've seen posts on fences that we did rot off in less than 5 years because they were encased in concrete in the right conditions, and all of a sudden the post failed. Post above grade look great. Post below grade, not so much. Why not use a really good wood post replacement in the form of steel? And you can do that in round pipe, or you can use the ones that we offer, and that is the Trident post, which is a special shape made to orient your 2x4s the correct way. And as you can see, we can still use them with a horizontal fence style. And that's why this 7-foot tall fence, even though it's got a huge north facing exposure and a huge west facing exposure, the 2 worst exposures you can get in Wyoming, and it's still straight and strong. And I mean to tell you, the wind comes whipping through here. It's crazy. And people do this. People do, look. If I pushed my wood fence, it wouldn't wiggle like that. Well, you know what? Skyscrapers move too. There's strength in that flex. And that's why these fences really do work. We committed to using nothing but steel in the ground for wood fences probably 15 years ago at least, and I have not been back to one project, not one project, where we've had to replace posts. This is a testament to the strength and durability of steel. It works. We have proof that it works. If you don't believe me, just check out some of these other videos over here. Till next time, I'm Mark with SWI. We're Wyoming's fence company, and I hope you have a good dang day.